everyone, to episode 5 of Healthy Mind, Fit Body podcast. This is Wes, and I have Kevin on the other line on Skype once again. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, guys. What's going on, Wes?
Not too much. I think our last show turned out pretty well, even though we had a few Skype issues, but this one should be pretty good too. And, last week we covered the issue of saturated fat, and that, of course, is a much maligned thing in our culture. And if you look at the diet section in the bookstore, you find all kinds of different books on all kinds of different diets saying that this is good for you, that's bad for you, and so on and so forth. So isn't it amazing how people can write so many different guidelines on how to eat and proper nutrition? And you wonder if it's true. How do you determine what's true and what's not?
Yeah, and that was the topic I kind of came up with yesterday. I was at Borders bookstore, and I was just kind of cruising around the nutrition or the health section and just found so many diet books. I mean, I haven't been to a bookstore in a while. I like to shop online at Amazon and things like that, but I just was blown away at how many diet books there are. And it seems like there's always kind of the ones up in the front that are the trendy, the latest trend ones, and then there's
New York Times bestsellers.
Yeah, the bestsellers. And then you've got just rows and rows of different takes on nutrition and fitness. And so I just looked at it and I'm like, that's confusing for me. I mean, I wouldn't know where to go. I mean, which book do you grab? I mean, it's amazing. So I picked up a few books. I picked up a couple of the trendy ones, and I got some ones that I thought were kind of along the lines of the way I look at nutrition. And then I got, a couple other ones that were just kind of random.
Mm-hmm.
Every book has the answer, and they have all the studies to back it up, right? And then it's interesting, one thing that I found is that a lot of the books that are, I would consider trendy, like to constantly point out that we should all ignore and avoid trendy diets. And they point out typically the low-carb diets, like the Atkins, Zone, and South Beach diet. So it's funny because those books, what people consider low-carb diets, I don't see them slamming all the other diets on the market.
No, the criticism laid against them is the fact that they're fad diets, that they just come and go. But the people that are accusing them of these things are typically in the mainstream, and they've been advocating a diet or way of eating that has led to virtually an epidemic of obesity and overweightness in America and some other places throughout the world. So they don't really have a good vantage point from which to criticize,
Yeah, the tough thing is, though, they do, a lot of these books, I looked at their mainstream books, they do point out studies and research that's been done, and they have all kinds of notations, and it looks pretty good. I mean, it looks like they've done their homework, and looks like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, what would be an example of one that would be heavily noted by the mainstream as the way to go? Because what we do see a lot is vegetarian, vegan as a much more preferable way to eat than the typical American diet.
Right, and that's right there, when you said that, it's like you're comparing a specific diet to the typical American diet, which any diet is probably better. Anything where you're actually watching what you eat is going to be better than the typical American diet, which is, pretty much crap.
Yeah, and as we were talking before the show, that a vegetarian vegan diet does have some healthy attributes, namely that you're eating a lot of vegetables.
Right.
And hopefully you're eating a lot of nuts, too, to get your fat, because you're not going to be able to get any fat, really, from many vegetables, other than, like we were talking last week about coconuts, and avocados would be another one. What other sorts of plant-based fats can one find? I guess the oils, olive oil and all those types of fats are really helpful for having good cardiovascular health and good overall health.
Right. So there are some benefits to when you talk about vegetarianism and vegans and things like that. Since they're eating a ton of vegetables, they're going to get the benefits from the vegetables. But I think pretty much most diet plans do have vegetables as important food items. So that's not really unique to any specific diet. But yeah, it seems like the latest ones, I picked up the book Skinny Bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting read. I didn't read the whole thing, but I read a lot of it. And it's written at about the third grade level, I'd say. A lot of spaces, huge font, and a lot of swearing. So I think they're trying to give the idea that they're down to earth and they're on your level and, anyone can understand this. It's easy. So, as far as the book goes, I didn't care for the tone. It was kind of insulting. I mean, she goes out of her way to insult her readers, which is, I think, supposed to be funny, but I don't see that being a really good strategy.
It's kind of a tough love approach, I guess, huh?
It is, yeah, exactly. I think they even say that, tough love, but
And the one catered to us, I guess, is Skinny Bastards, so.
that's right, and that just came out. So, yeah, skinny bastard. But they have some good points. They talk about, avoiding sugar and how bad sugar is for you. And that's great. And they talk about, having an independent mind and not believing the FDA. It's like the worst thing you can do is just take whatever the FDA says as fact.
Mm-hmm.
And it pretty much turns out that most of what the FDA says is it's actually the opposite. They talked about the studies that the FDA did on NutraSweet
Mm-hmm.
and how completely flawed and bought out that whole thing was, and how the FDA turned down NutraSweet as a sweetener 7 times, and then suddenly they approved it. And there's a whole lot of corporatism going on there, and all kinds of bad things. So basically, just read the ingredients on your foods and don't depend on anyone else. So that was a good message. But then they talk about the low-carb fads and how we should all avoid that and how ridiculous they all are and how it's obvious that it didn't work. So move on. And now, they're recommending no meat, so they support the vegan diet. And that's, they say the only way to go. And also, I think they want to come across as like, oh, this is so simple and everything. But they were being really restrictive. I mean, they said, one of the chapters is on drinking coffee. And, stay away from coffee completely.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible for you. And then they said the best thing you can do is just get decaf tea. That's the only way to go. And I don't know if the studies have shown, I mean, I've read a lot of studies that have shown that caffeine is actually, in small doses, can actually be good for you. So, I think there's a little bit of, it's pretty restrictive in terms of what they're advocating.
Not to mention all the antioxidants that are in coffee, as well as, say, green tea.
Right, and even with the caffeine, you're still getting all the antioxidants.